this week's drive, we head straight to the scene of the accident, compare Formula One to kart in Canada, reach into the archives for a legend, and look at the statistics of another. All this and more in this week's Drive. Kelvin Burt had the perfect ASCAR weekend at Rockingham in England. With a hat-trick of victories, he took the lead in the championship ahead of Colin White. Burt is a former British touring car and Porsche GTO racer, and he led from start to finish in all three races. The event was at the 1.5-mile banked oval, the only one in England, Burt setting fastest laps in each event. The final race had to be stopped and restarted after British touring car champion Jason Plato's number 76 car smashed into the wall on lap 2. Kevin McGarrity in car number 48, who races for MG at Le Mans, attempted an audacious move inside Plato into turn 1 and made contact. Plato speared into the wall at high speed and was collected by Mark Proctor in number 12, who was following close behind. Both Plato and Proctor were unable to take part in the restarted race, with Plato's championship hopes seriously dented as a result. When the green flag dropped for the 50-lap rerun, it was Burt, in the pink car and with 2 wins already under his belt, who made the perfect start to take the lead ahead of his teammate, Nicholas Manassian. Manassian followed Burt home 2.7 seconds further back, with Colin White keeping ahead of Roland Rayfeld to finish third. Burt's third victory over the 2 days took him to the top of the ASCAR Championship standings, 17 points ahead of second-placed White, with Manassian 72 points further back in third.
We'll have to watch along with you tonight.
Across the Atlantic, identical cars were racing before a huge crowd and under floodlights at Bristol in Tennessee. It was to be an eventful race for several drivers as tempers flared during the incident-filled race, with a night record 118 laps run under 16 caution flags. Eventually, pole sitter Jeff Gordon ended a 31-race NASCAR winless drought. During the event, Elliott Sadler exchanged paint with Joe Nemechek, with Elliott out but Nemechek still circulating.
A little bit, looks like he got sideways.
Sadler's gestures are pretty clear, but it's doubtful whether Joe was able to take them in at 200 miles an hour.
A little upset. Somebody's already boiling over.
That must have hurt. He'll probably be back. Mark Martin was a victim of circumstance in a late accident caused by Robbie Gordon that also took out Johnson after a restart on lap 377. Both Martin and Johnson are title contenders, but would take no points away from this event. Dale Earnhardt Jr. knocked Ward Burton out of the race on lap 404, but kept running himself, going on to finish third. Burton is one unhappy racing driver, and he gets dangerously close to the cars to throw his gloves at Earnhardt in protest. Rusty Wallace, the winningest active driver at Bristol with 9, took the lead from Kevin Harvick with 18 laps remaining, but with 4 laps to go, Gordon passes Wallace with a bump-and-run maneuver. It was Gordon's 59th career win and first since last September. The 4-time Winston Cup champion led for 235 of the 500 laps to end the longest drought of his career. We head north to Montreal in Canada for the first kart race at the Gilles Villeneuve circuit. This is the only track in the world where both Formula One and kart races are held, allowing a comparison of lap times, which sees the Formula One cars lapping significantly faster. Juan Pablo Montoya's best lap in his Williams was more than 4 seconds faster than Dario Franchitti's quickest lap. The race sees drama early as Paul Tracy taps Alex Tagliani, who takes out Kenny Brack. Kenny, who has been knocked out of 4 races in the first 2 laps this season, was off the track and done for the day. Cristiano Di Matta started from pole for the 7th time this season and was shooting for his 7th victory. But his team brought him in for an early splash and dash on lap 12 under a yellow flag when Mario Dominguez stalled on the track. Di Matta's early stop forced him to pit for a 4th time later on, losing the lead to Dario Franchitti. Shinji Nakano's spin nearly collects leader Franchitti, but the Scotsman slips around and stays in front. Di Matta got one last shot at the leader though when Adrian Fernandez crashed on lap 71, bringing out the 3rd and final caution flag of the race. On the restart on lap 75, Nakano, a lap down, was between the 2 leaders and Di Matta didn't get by until the Japanese driver moved over on lap 76. By that time, Franchitti was ahead by 2.6 seconds. It was the 2nd victory of the year and 9th of his career for Franchitti. He moved past Patrick Carpentier and Bruno Junqueira to take 2nd place in the championship, a daunting 56 points behind Di Matta, with 6 of 19 races remaining. Di Matta tightened his grip on the championship with 16 points for 2nd, plus 2 points for fastest laps. Tony Kanaan finished 3rd, followed by Paul Tracy. Only 10 of the 18 starters were still running at the end of the high attrition race. If any of Michael Schumacher and Ferrari's opponents thought they might get an easier ride now the Italian team have clinched both the drivers' and constructors' crowns, they should think again. The world champion became the first man to win 10 races in a single season at his favourite circuit, the scene of his Formula One debut and maiden Grand Prix victory, Spa-Francorchamps. The German took the checkered flag in a Grand Prix for the first time there in a Benetton exactly 10 years ago. He's won there 6 times, more often than any other driver at the long, fast track, and his win there last year marked his 52nd Grand Prix victory, beating Alain Prost's record tally. And during the 10 years of his career, Michael has been world champion 5 times. The others were Prost, Damon Hill, Jacques Villeneuve, and Mika Häkkinen twice. There is no sitting on laurels at Fiorano, the team's private test track, just a stone's throw from the factory at Maranello in northern Italy. Between-race testing is relentless, and Michael is no weekend racer. He's often personally involved in a punishing schedule of testing new components, developments and settings. Schumacher has equalled the record number of championships, 5 won by Juan Manuel Fangio in the 1950s, beaten the number of Grand Prix wins in a single season, 9 held by Nigel Mansell, and seems to be at the peak of his career. With such achievements, a young family and immense personal wealth, the question millions are pondering is, when will Michael retire? Not the least of whom are the other 24 top racers in the world who seem destined to be fighting for 2nd place. But Schumacher seems to be in no rush to step down. He's still having a great deal of fun and is, as we've seen, still at the peak of his skill. Ultimately, only he can say when the time is right to retire, but we're guessing it won't be for a while yet. Although the focus is very much on the winning driver's achievement, it's worth considering what goes into the making of a champion. And obviously that's the car and the team that builds it. Toyota is the newest team in Formula One, and their factory is in Germany, where about 550 people from 27 nations hand-build a handful of cars each year. The modern Formula One workshop is more like a clinical laboratory than a traditional garage. It's obvious that a significant investment has been made here. The factory was the base for Toyota's World Rally Championship efforts and their attempts on the Le Mans 24-hour race, but was doubled in size to accommodate the Formula One team. Floor space at the factory is split 60-40 between the chassis and engine teams. The only other Formula One team to build both the chassis and their own engine is Ferrari. Toyota's 3-litre V10 engine is the brainchild of Norbert Kreyer and has been described as one of the best engines in Formula One, perhaps second only to the BMW unit fitted to the Williams cars. Yamaha have also played a part in designing the engine. Aerodynamics, the effect of the air on a racing car's physical shape, are critical, and an exact half-size scale model is made so that its performance can be tested in the team's own wind tunnel. The wings at the front and back of a car force it onto the track with such force that, at top speed, a Formula One car could drive upside down along the roof of a tunnel. The wind tunnel has massive fans to generate airflow of over 350 kilometers an hour, and from their control panels, engineers can study the effects that small changes can make. One of the team's drivers is Scotsman Alan McNish.
Toyota and TMG, it was already a big outfit. It was 300 people when they were running the Rally and Le Mans programs. However, for Formula One, that's had to basically double. And to then double your workforce and to increase the size of your factory and build new wind tunnels and things like that does take a bit of effort. And then to get everyone to work together, that's the critical thing.
In top-class racing, the need to create new components usually means it's quicker to make them in-house. Here, a section of a new exhaust system is bent to exacting measurements and then painstakingly welded. Weight is also cut wherever possible, so many parts are made of special materials, some of which need to be vacuum formed in molds and then baked in a huge oven before being cooled under controlled conditions. Designs are made on computer. Parts are machined to the computer's instructions and then super accurately checked. Here, a gearbox casing, complete with the lower strake of the rear wing, is three-dimensionally measured at hundreds of points to make sure it's what the computer ordered. And where a human is involved, it's to program one of the computer numerically controlled milling machines. Even the driver's body has to fit perfectly, so measurements are made and seats are custom made to get the right seating position. Drivers are usually small. Bigger drivers simply don't fit into the tiny cockpits. Once all this is done, the track testing can start.
Testing does have its own satisfactions. When you do progress, when you make things better, when you go faster, when you do a good lap time, then that's the satisfaction from testing.
Mika Salo from Finland was Toyota's other driver, here with team boss and former rally champion Ove Andersson. But times are changing at the team as McNish and Salo, here posing with Andersson, will leave the team at the end of the year. For Salo, being dropped will probably spell retirement after 2 years with the team. McNish spent most of his career in sports car racing but has failed to score a single Formula One point so far this season and has long been rumoured to be heading for the exit door. The 36-year-old Salo has performed well for Toyota in the team's first season, scoring a couple of sixth places since the team's debut at the Australian Grand Prix in March. Leader of the kart championship, Brazilian Cristiano de Mata, is reportedly being lined up for a seat at Toyota, but one of the vacant berths has already been filled, with Olivier Panis making the switch from British American racing. The Frenchman, who has previously driven for Ligier and Prost, brings an abundance of experience and is one of the most popular characters in the Formula One paddock. The 35-year-old began well for the BAR team, providing real competition for number one driver Jacques Villeneuve in 2001. However, Panis has endured a miserable run this season, suffering 10 retirements so far. The only bright spot for Panis was a fifth-place finish at the British Grand Prix in June, his only points of the year. His place at BAR will be taken by British driver Jenson Button next year. Having settled his position for next season, Olivier recently took a driving seat of a different kind for a helicopter lesson in the skies above Magny-Cours in France. Taking the chance to get a bird's-eye view of his home circuit, Olivier took to the air with an instructor, trying out the controls for a quick lesson with a pilot. If he doesn't have to fly to away races, Olivier prefers to travel by car, so leaving the controls to his instructor, he welcomed the chance to have an aerial tour of the countryside and have a look at all the different chateaux. There are many spectacular and beautiful buildings in the region, and Olivier was able to see some of them from the air. Although terra firma is the preferred option for Olivier, he still enjoyed the challenge and made comparisons between the finesse needed to fly the helicopter and in driving a Formula One car.
Il y a tellement de choses qui sont différentes de ce qu'on fait normalement dans la F1. C'est totalement différent, donc c'est un peu... Là, je te laisse faire parce que je suis pas à l'aise.
Là, on le fait ensemble, hein. Je ne pilote pas tout seul. Hein. Voilà, c'est toi qui as les commandes, tranquille. C'est très très doux, c'est toi qui le fais là.
Il y a quelque chose qui ressemble à la F1, c'est-à-dire que tu as quand même le manche, tu as des pédales, tu as les gaz moteurs qui sont différents de ce qu'on gère d'habitude.
So, lesson completed. Will Olivier be joining many of his colleagues on the grid and adding a helicopter to his personal collection of toys? Apparently not. Back on solid ground, Olivier's focus is firmly on flying on four wheels and a lot closer to the ground as he prepares for the remaining races of the season.
Well, I'm very pleased to be outside, to be honest, but no, I'm really pleased. Really, he's a fantastic machine, but it's not easy things. We need a good feeling and we need a lot of experience, like maybe Formula One, because it's a very personal feeling. But I'm really enjoyed. I'm not. I want to say I'm not 100% sure, but is a first good listen. I'm really pleased. Maybe I need to try more.
The seventh round of the World Speedway Grand Prix season was held in Gothenburg in Sweden before a crowd of 26,250. World champ Tony Rickardsson of Sweden had the crowd's support in the final. When the race started, Australian Lee Adams, riding with the white helmet, took an early lead from local hero Rickardsson, Lucas Drummel of the Czech Republic in the blue, and Greg Hancock of the United States in yellow. Adams, one of the most popular riders on the Grand Prix circuit, has been without a win in his 8 seasons of racing. But the month had already proved special for him. Wife Kylie presented Lee with a daughter, Casey, last week, and he admitted, "It has been a fantastic few days for me. This time a week ago I was at the hospital with Kylie. Now I have a daughter and a Grand Prix victory." The young Australian was never really threatened and went on to score his maiden Grand Prix win. Despite Rickardsson's failure to win in front of his home crowd, he moved on to 132 points in the overall standings to open up a 9-point lead over Ryan Sullivan, with 3 Grand Prix left in the season. Sullivan failed to reach the final in Gothenburg, having finished 4th in his semi-final. Another Australian, Jason Crump, is 3rd on 108, with Adams 4th on 104. The 8th round of the World Cup will be held in Poland. We go back in time now to the golden era of motorsport, when rich enthusiasts went racing for fun. In the 1920s, Bentleys were winning, driven by the flamboyant Bentley boys. One of them was aristocrat Sir Henry Birkin, known as Tim. But what sort of man was he? His descendant, Sir John Birkin.
He was such a sportsman, and particularly in the area in Norfolk. I mean, he was such a prodigious shot and hunter and a fisherman and a pugilist and all of that. He used to leap into the ring and kind of try and get involved in the end of fights.
Birkin was born in 1896 in Nottingham, where his father, Sir Thomas, ran the family lace business. Tim took to the track in 1921, and 12 years later, he died at the age of just 36. Birkin had bought a Maserati at the beginning of 1933 and finished 3rd in the Tripoli Grand Prix, but burnt his arms on the exhaust during a pit stop. 3 weeks later, he was dead of septicemia in a London nursing home. Ironically, penicillin had been invented at the nearby St Mary's Hospital, but hadn't yet found medical use. Of all the Bentley boys, Tim Birkin was the one that schoolboys knew best. He was a ruthless driver who drove his cars very hard and became the ultimate racing icon of his time. Silk scarf flying in the wind, a model of bravery and excitement. He was a small man and he spoke with a stutter which did nothing to damage his reputation as a ladies' man. Tim Birkin, alongside such names as Sir Henry Seagrave and Malcolm Campbell, was probably the most famous racing driver of his time. He took a commission in the World War of 1914-1918, and although he learnt to fly in the reserve of the Royal Flying Corps, he returned to the trenches, reaching the rank of captain. One of his brothers died in battle. Birkin's interest in cars went back to his childhood.
I really got interested in the story of Tim from my aunt, who told me the tale about when, as a very young boy, he was bet by his uncle and his godfathers that he couldn't build a car because he spent all his time in the garage around the back of his family home. And he took up their bet and did, in fact, construct a car from scratch, which went down the run of his drive. And he won £15, which was a lot of money then, from the outraged father and uncles, and bought his first car with it.
In 1921, the year he started racing, Tim Birkin was married and the couple honeymooned at this hotel in the English village of Blakeney. His first race was at the famous banked Brooklands track. Although they had 2 daughters, the marriage ended in divorce and Birkin became much more heavily involved in racing. In 1925, with his brother Cecil, known as Archie, he bought 2 3-litre Bentleys, and the two raced sporadically. But Archie was more interested in motorcycles, and he was killed trying to avoid a fish cart while practicing for the 1927 Isle of Man TT, and a corner is named after him. Tim decided to go racing seriously, but his father was unhappy and was never able to watch his son race. In 1927, Tim bought another 3-litre Bentley and raced against the works cars. As a result, he was invited to join the factory team the next year, and he campaigned a 4.5-litre Bentley, finishing 5th at Le Mans. Although his friend Wolf Bonato won that year, Birkin set the fastest lap. His driving style was aggressive. He did well as long as the machinery stood up, but he showed little mechanical sympathy behind the wheel. He was well suited to the rugged Bentleys, which Ettore Bugatti once famously called the fastest lorries in the world. He competed in a number of races in 1928, including the Ulster Tourist Trophy at Ards near Belfast, and eventually took another 5th place. But he had become obsessed with supercharging the 4.5-litre Bentley, something which nearly destroyed Bentley, according to legendary engineer Walter Hassan.
4.5-litre was never part of the Bentley strategy at all. The Bentley 4.5-litre blown was forced upon us by Birkin, who, through Wolf Bonato, got it agreed that we would produce the required 50 production cars to enable Birkin to enter his blown 4.5-litre.
The company built the supercharged cars but struggled to sell them. Hassan, who went on to work for Jaguar, Bristol and Climax, referred to them as bloody awful cars. With the 4.5-litre still under development, Birkin drove the 6.5-litre, the legendary Speed 6, with Bonato at Le Mans in 1929, to lead home 3 other Bentleys, all of them unsupercharged 4.5 litres. It was to be Birkin's finest hour, and we'll take another look at the life and times of this racing English gentleman in next week's Drive.